Soon. Soon, little sister, soon.
If you made a pickle, cause there's nothing left to spread. Got a kitchen full of people and there's nothing in your head. We've got all the answers, got a lot for you in store. Pickle, sausage, jelly, jellies, jams, and more. Put a lid on it. Put a lid on it. There's just nothing in the world you can't preserve. Put a lid on it. Put a lid on it. And sit back and get the praise that you deserve.
Many people who have dared to make a simple freezer jam or pickle some beets for some reason find it very intimidating to think about making jelly. But if you've made jelly before, you know it doesn't have to be intimidating. It's actually very easy.
Hi, and welcome to Put a Lid on It. Today, Jane and I are going to give you some great jelly recipes. Now we've got spiced apple jelly, cranberry hot pepper jelly with balsamic vinegar, and an orange port wine jelly. Like Jane said, making jelly is not tough. But like good wine, it does take a bit of time and patience.
But no extraordinary skill
Hey, she makes it.
or equipment. So stay with us because we want to share all those great jelly recipes with you. They're fabulous and easy.
Hi, and welcome to Put a Lid on It. Today, Jane and I are going to show you how to make absolutely painless jellies.
That's right, we have great recipes for you today. First one is a spiced apple jelly recipe. We have an orange port wine jelly recipe for you. And then we have a cranberry hot pepper jelly with balsamic vinegar.
That's right. Very good. Now, first recipe, the spiced apple jelly, is actually two recipes in one because you can either use crab apples or fresh apples that you've gotten from the market. And there's a reason for this.
Well, the most important thing that Jennifer just said is fresh because we're not using any commercial pectin in this recipe. All our pectin is going to come from the stems of these apples, from the seeds and the peelings. So for this recipe you're going to need 8 cups of apple, 6 cups of water, a 1/4 cup of cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of whole cloves, 2 cinnamon sticks, and 1½ cups of sugar.
Now, we're going to do our first part of our recipe. We've taken the apples, they've been washed, but they haven't been peeled or cored. We just quartered them or cut them into big slices. Either way, it'll work. And we put everything in our saucepan. A large saucepan is a good idea, except for our sugar. Now, all of that is going to go onto the stove. We're going to bring it to a boil, and we're going to let it simmer gently for about 30 minutes.
Now we're going to cover that.
One cover coming up.
Because we want all the liquid to remain. So now here we have
I'm going to get rid of some of this so it's not in our way.
our apple jelly that's gone through the first stage.
And we have to strain this mixture twice. The first time through a coarse sieve to remove the solids, and you can actually help it go through the sieve so that you can get a little extra liquid.
And one of the reasons we do this is because if we were just going to strain it once, it would take a lot longer to go through a cheesecloth. So that's our reason for straining it twice.
And the second time that we strain it is through a finer sieve, and you might want to grab that since my hands are full.
I might want to. I think I will. I'll do that for you.
So this is removing your cinnamon sticks, your cloves, all of that. I could use your lid to put this on.
Put a lid under that, shall I?
Put a lid under it. Our next thing we're going to do is our second straining, and this is through either cheesecloth in a sieve or a jelly bag.
Now often at home, if you don't happen to have a large enough sieve, what you might want to do is put your cheesecloth and just attach it to the sides of your bowls with some clothespins.
Good
That
tip.
will work equally well. So now this will take a while to drip through. So we have one here that is dripped through. So it's ready now for us to add the sugar.
And you'll notice that the liquid is nice and clear. So our sugar goes in.
We're going to stir that up really well.
And then that's going to go back onto the stove, and you're going to bring that to a boil and let it simmer for about 15 minutes or until it forms a gel. And Jane's going to tell you some tips on how to find out.
Well, talking about gelling, I'm going to show you here. Now this is our jelly that has been on the stove. It's reached the right consistency. So I want to show you how you can do a gel test. You're going to take a spoon, and you want 2 drips, as you can see here, to form one. It's very important that you let it cook for a long time, as Jennifer said, the 12 to 15 minutes, because although it will set a bit in your jars once you've already put it in your jars, you want to have it to as perfect a gel consistency as you can. So now this is still very hot. And Jennifer and I didn't mention, but this will make 2 half-pint jars of wonderful spiced jelly.
What I'll do is get your jars.
Now, you can eat this jelly, of course, on toast or any way you would any kind of jam. But if you happen to use crab apples, it is wonderful with any kind of poultry.
Or pork. Pork is good too.
The 2 P's, pork or poultry.
Now here, we put our jars in our hot water bath, and they've been on for a minimum of 10 minutes because we're only processing this jelly for 5 minutes, and that way our jars are sterile before we put our jelly into it.
Now, so often people are a little hesitant to try jelly. All jellies look beautiful and they usually taste wonderful, so people assume they're hard to make. Well, we've just shown you they're very easy, and our other 2 recipes are just as good and just as easy. So please try this recipe.
The difference with our headspace on our jelly is when we fill our jar, we only need to leave about 1/4 of an inch. With our jam or with our pickles or our relishes, we had to leave 1/2 inch. So it's a bit different that way.
Now I'm going to fill this second jar. We talked about our processing time.
That was only 5 minutes.
So when we put our jars back into our water bath canner, we're going to want the water to cover our jars by at least 1 inch. Now, we are just about perfect at the 2 half-pint mark.
The difference between crabapple jelly and apple jelly is crabapple jelly is kind of tart and tangy, and you might notice that your jelly's a bit more red, and apple jelly is kind of sweet and smooth.
Apple jelly is my favorite. I think it's a lot like me. Whereas Jennifer, well, she seems to remind me of that tart crabapple jelly. Now we're going to put our lids on. Wipe our rim, always, always, always. Now our snap lids were simmering gently for 5 minutes. You have to soften that compound.
And here's our second lid.
You want to follow your manufacturer's directions when you're preparing your snap lids.
I'll give you a snap lid and I'll take one.
How about giving me a screw band?
Oh, a screw band would work too. Now this is 2 pints of perfect spiced apple jelly.
Keep in mind, they go back into our water bath canner, but we're going to be back with those great orange port wine recipe and the other cranberry hot chili pepper with balsamic vinegar. Stay tuned.
On today's craft segment, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to paint right on our mason jars. Now you can get plain mason jars, or you can get mason jars that have almost a raised glass finish, and there's fruit, little pictures of fruit all around the outside of the glass. And this is what we do. We take our paint, it's non-toxic, acrylic, and water-based, and we paint right onto our jars. And once you paint on them, the image of the fruit almost seems to jump right out. So on this jar, there's lots of fruit, but I'm going to start off with some grapes. They're large, and the other thing about this is it's a great activity for the kids. My nieces Courtney and Carolyn can't wait to get over to my house, get into the craft kit, and grab the preserves off the shelf, because that's a really great activity for them and they have a lot of fun. Now that's one option. Something else you can do is get a little stencil. This is a small stencil and it's of apples, and we've cut it and just put some tape on it to hold it in place. Now you take a stencil brush and just dab some paint any which way you want. You can overlap the paint so you get kind of a three-dimensional look to your fruit. So once that's dry, you can remove your stencil, and that's all there is to it. The last thing I'm going to show you is freehand painting. Now this is something that the kids really like because they can go wild. They paint scenes, they paint fruit. Sometimes they've even painted Jane and I onto the jars. But you can do anything you want as long as you use the flat glass jars. They don't have any raised glass on them. So there are a few ideas for you. You can do just about anything you want, and I hope you'll try it at home.
Oh, we were talking painless jellies. Spiced apple jelly was a breeze. Now you're a pro. Let's try orange port wine jelly and cranberry hot pepper jelly with balsamic vinegar. We're going to start out with my recipe, and what you're going to need: 1 cup of port wine, 1 cup of orange juice concentrate that you have thawed, 1/4 cup of strained lemon juice, 3½ cups of sugar, and 1 pouch of liquid pectin. Now, we want to combine all our ingredients except our pectin.
And I get to help this time.
Yes, you do.
Now something you should know, you want nice clear jellies, so use frozen concentrate that is pulp free, and also make sure you strain your lemon juice, and then you'll have that nice clear jelly.
And this jelly is so beautiful. It's a lovely color and a delicious taste. So what you want to do now is take this jelly to the stove, bring it to a hard rolling boil, and boil it hard for 1 minute.
I'll clean up for you.
Now here's our jelly. It's been on, reaching a hard rolling boil. Now this is our hard rolling boil. It's been boiling 1 minute, so we take it off the stove and we add our liquid pectin.
And I'll get your jars.
Now, who'd have believed that it can be that easy to make jelly? And this is a delicious recipe, as I said. This is going to make about 4½ cups orange port wine jelly. Great served with any kind of meat, and it's also nice over cream cheese and crackers.
Here we go.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Now, I'll get a cloth.
Now this is a nice clear jelly too. I'm big on that clear jelly.
You are pulp-free.
And something you might notice, we're filling it to about 1/4 inch from the top rim. And the other thing is, once it cools, is that you're going to notice that the jelly starts to set. It gets a lot firmer. I could have gotten those for you.
Well, you could have, but you were so busy gabbing. Now, we did sterilize our bottles for 10 minutes in our water bath canner. Lid simmering gently for 5 minutes. So we're going to process both my jelly recipe and Jennifer's for 5 minutes in our water bath canner. So that's all there is to it.
Very simple.
Orange port wine jelly, done.
Absolutely painless, and mine is just as painless. What we need for this recipe is 1 red pepper that we've seeded and chopped, 2 jalapeno chili peppers, they've been seeded and chopped. We need 1/4 cup of water, 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar, 1/2 cup of cider vinegar, 1 pouch of our liquid fruit pectin, 3/4 cup of cranberry concentrate that was frozen and we've thawed, and 3 cups of sugar. So Jane, you can help with this.
All right.
I'm going to put all of our ingredients, our vinegar, water, and our peppers, into a saucepan. We're going to take that to a stove and bring it to a boil.
All of our first row ingredients, is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. All of our first row ingredients. We're going to bring it to a boil and let it boil gently for 10 minutes. We want all the flavor to go into the liquid, and then we're going to strain it. And make sure you keep it covered because you don't want anything to evaporate. Now we have one that is ready, and Jane's going to get the strainer.
Is she?
Yes, she is.
We need 2 strainers. We're going to strain it first to remove the large pieces of solid.
And you can see them going in. And if you want to just scrape that out, Jane, so we can get all of our peppers. And you can even push down on your peppers to try and get the most of your liquid. Get the most out of those peppers.
Extract all the liquid that you can. The next straining.
This is the second strainer that we use. It's a fine sieve, and we've put cheesecloth in it, but you can just as easily, as we said before, you can use a J-cloth or you can use a jelly bag.
So what we would do is after it is strained through here and we've extracted most of our liquid,
I'll do this.
then we would pour it through the cheesecloth. This gives you, as Jennifer likes, a nice clear jelly.
Right, and you can see there's still a few little bits of the pepper that came out into our cheesecloth.
Now, it may not look like much liquid here, but after you've let it drain from the first straining, you get a lot more liquid. So,
and our next step is to put our sugar and our cranberry juice in. And we stir that up because we want our sugar to dissolve quite well. And you can give that a stir, Jane.
Can I?
Yes, you can. And
Now,
this is really tangy, and the flavor is intense.
I put that on for a rolling boil. It's been on 1 minute. You might want
Okay, that's perfect.
So now this goes on uncovered.
For
Same
1
thing.
minute.
1 minute.
Bring it to a hard rolling boil. Let it boil for 1 minute. And this was certainly boiling hard. Now we can add our liquid fruit pectin.
You'll need another spoon. We've dirtied a lot of
We
spoons
certainly do.
because you don't really want to stir with a spatula. You wouldn't believe how quickly they can melt. We know.
We have learned the hard way. Our last step, now Jane stirred that in. We're going to get our jars. And this is going to make 3 cups. Same thing, we boiled them in our boiling water bath for 10 minutes. And we've got to process them for 5.
Great recipe, as Jennifer said. Now you might want to serve this with any meat dish. It also goes very well with wild game. Or if you're playing a wild game of Monopoly, maybe. We're talking about the wild game you eat.
Oh, and it's just as good with cream cheese and crackers. But because it's a traditional pepper recipe, adding the cranberries to it, the cranberry sauce, or the cranberry juice, gives it a really festive feel. Ho,
Now,
ho, ho.
I've got the ring.
Would you like a lid?
I'm just missing one thing.
And I bet you that would be my lid.
Now,
If I can fish it out. There we go.
As Jennifer said, we're going to want to process both these jellies in our water bath canner for 5 minutes. See, Painless jellies. You can do it. Quick, quick, quick like a bunny. Now that's an expression that my mother often used, and it's an expression that I want you to remember when you're making jelly, because one of the great tips to making successful jelly is to get that hot jelly into your hot jars and to do it quickly, because you want to avoid something called pan set. Now pan set can occur if you've cooked your jelly for the appropriate amount of time, but you continue to leave it on the stove. What will happen is that jelly at the bottom of the pan will continue to cook. You will end up with little clumps of jelly that when you pour it into your jars, it's not going to disappear. Now another way that pan set can occur is if you're using a pot that is a little too large, then the liquid will start to evaporate, things will cook too quickly, and you will also end up with clumps. So you want to avoid that. But now I'm going to talk about something called weeping jelly. Now Manny, come in nice and close here. As you can see, we have a firm portion of our jelly on the inside, and outside we have a little bit of liquid. Now this surrounds our jelly, and if you were looking at this jar of jelly, you might think that maybe this jelly didn't turn out good because it had this extra bit of liquid. This is called weeping jelly, but guess what? It does not affect the taste at all. And it's very hard to avoid, so don't worry if your jelly is weeping because it's going to taste delicious anyway. Now I also want to talk to you about making your own jelly bag. Now this is just a colander that I lined with 3 layers of cheesecloth, which I dampened. Then I took clothespins and secured the cheesecloth to the colander. This makes a great jelly bag. So if you don't have a traditional one, don't worry, you can make your own. Now the other thing I want you to remember, whether you're using a jelly bag like this or a traditional one, is do not squeeze that cheesecloth. Even though you might be tempted to get those few extra ounces of liquid out, it's not worth it because it's going to give you cloudy jelly. So try those success tips. Jelly is well worth the little bit of extra time. 8 cups of apples or crab apples, 6 cups of water, a 1/4 cup of cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of whole cloves, 2 cinnamon sticks, 1 1/2 cups of granulated sugar. Combine apple pieces, water, vinegar, cloves, and cinnamon sticks in a large saucepan. Cover and bring to a boil over high heat. Reduce your heat and boil gently for 30 minutes. Strain your mixture through a coarse sieve, discard the solids, and pour liquid through a jelly bag. Now return your strained liquid to your pan and add sugar. Bring to a boil and boil rapidly until your mixture will form a gel. Remove from heat and pour jelly into jars. Process for 5 minutes. 1 cup of port wine, 1 cup of orange juice concentrate, a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, 3 1/2 cups of granulated sugar, and a pouch of liquid pectin. Place wine, orange juice, lemon juice, and sugar in a saucepan. Bring to a boil, boil hard for 1 minute, stirring constantly. Remove from heat and stir in pectin. Process for 5 minutes.
1 large sweet red pepper seeded, 2 jalapeno chili peppers seeded or another hot pepper, 1/4 cup of water, a 1/2 cup of cider vinegar, 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar, 3/4 of a cup of thawed frozen cranberry cocktail concentrate, 3 cups of granulated sugar, and 1 pouch of liquid fruit pectin. Finely chop your peppers. Place in a small saucepan with water and vinegar. Bring mixture to a boil, reduce heat, cover, and boil gently for 10 minutes. Strain mixture through a coarse sieve. Discard solids and pour through a jelly bag. Place strained liquid, cranberry concentrate, and sugar in a saucepan. Bring to a full boil over high heat, stirring constantly. Stir in your pectin, return to a full boil, and boil hard for 1 minute, stirring constantly. Pour jelly into jars and process for 5 minutes.
Well, now you've seen just how easy it is to make jelly.
We didn't lead you astray with all those great jelly recipes.
We want you to try them because they're all delicious and, as we said, easy. Now, we do know that it takes a little bit of time to make preserves, but it's well worth it. And if you have some extra, a great idea might be to donate some to a charitable organization.
Or if you have some time, you can volunteer in your community.
It's always a great idea to get involved.
Now, on our next show, we're going to show you how to make some liqueurs and syrups. This show is called Nectar of the Gods.
I don't think we have to say anything else because I have a feeling you'll want to watch that. Thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Put a Lid on It.